This is Making Better Decisions. I'm your host, Ryan Sullivan. Decisions are where rubber meets the road for organizations. Each week, we'll be learning from people who are on the front lines of turning raw data into better outcomes for their organizations. This show is sponsored by Canopy Analytic, helping companies make better decisions using data. Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Making Better Decisions podcast and happy New Year's Day. To start off 2025, I wanted to first ease in with some predictions, advice, and insights to kick off the new year. Let's jump into it.
What data tactics are you planning to use this year to make better decisions?
I think that 2024 was a year of massive technological, I'll say realization. A lot of the technologies that are capturing the public's imagination right now are technologies that have existed for quite some time, but have really reached maturity as far as getting out into the market, having people both build for and understand. So, obviously, one of the big ones is generative AI. I think that over the course of 2025, we're going to start to see the market create more purpose driven tools there that will be much easier to implement and to understand. I think that being primarily a Microsoft consultant, Microsoft's new Fabric product, which is kind of an umbrella term. They've taken a handful of technologies and packaged them together, come out with a couple new ones. They've really made a unified platform for analytics within the Microsoft ecosystem and many other technologies that have come out. I think this is going to be a year of trying to figure out how those new technologies can best impact organizations. 2024 was this kind of very exciting year of seeing these new things and doing imagining with them. How could they, but I think that 2025 is an area where some of these new technologies are kind of fully going to land, and organizations and consultants such as myself are going to have our work cut out for us making sure that we're using them the best that we can.
What is a data mistake or misconception that you saw or heard about a lot last year and want to avoid seeing this year?
The first thing that comes to mind isn't really a mistake as much as a balance. So there is a strong need within analytics to balance short term and long term objectives. So let's say I'm a brand new, chief data, chief analytics, whoever within an organization is responsible for spearheading data and analytics initiatives. There is a danger to just saying, "Hey, we're going to focus on, totally shooting the moon and building this incredible large, whatever, and it's going to take us 5 years and we're not going to see any results until year 6." So, somewhere along those 5 years, somebody's going to look at the financials and be like, "Wait, we're spending how much on what? What has it gotten us? X." So, one of the things that I have seen frequently is that an over focus on large scale, long term initiatives, many times, unless it's completely transformational to the organization and has buy in at every position in senior leadership, doesn't tend to come to fruition because the costs aren't borne out as return. Similarly, if an organization focuses exclusively on short term quick wins, you end up kind of with this corner cutting, very reactive data and analytics culture that also doesn't serve the organization. So, the thing that I'd love to see folks embrace a little bit more, and we can use the current year, our New Year's resolutions to try and help drive some of this change, is to focus on balancing both of those things. So it is important to have a long term data strategy and set of goals if we're going to get anywhere materially different in 5 years. On the other hand, it is important to ensure that the organization realizes value along the way. So, what are the long term objectives of the company? How can those be organized and structured to provide wins along the way? And how can we balance that long term and that short term return on investment so that we're both justifying the cost, returning on that cost, but also driving the organization to be materially better over a longer period of time?
How do you see the role of data evolving in everyday decision making over the next year?
I think some of the things that I have already mentioned, as far as the technological improvements really landing and driving real change this year, are going to have a massive impact. And I want to be really clear what I mean by that. Technologies provide capabilities. I have yet in all of my time to find something that is just like a totally thoughtless, sign up with a credit card, bang, massive changes. Everything requires new knowledge, iteration, understanding of how using this technology changes an organization and also changes the other organizations that are in a company's market. So I think that as these technologies become more mature and prolific, the role of data will change to facilitate some of these new things. So, all of the new artificial intelligence tools that are out there, Fabric that I mentioned earlier, lots of kind of interesting database and infrastructural technologies that are out there. They all need two things, they need input and they need a goal. So, I think that one of the major things that I'd love to see folks focus on is ensuring that that goal is clearly defined and that then they have and organize and clean the data that is going to go into that new technology. One additional thing that I would mention is that, we've talked a lot today about some of these new tools landing, particularly some of the very cool generative AI stuff that is out on the market. I think that it is really important to mention that these new tools are just that, they're new tools. There is undoubtedly, to use an economics term, creative destruction, right? So some of the old way, some of the things that we've done in the past or are currently doing will die as a result of these, awesome, cool, fast, great new technologies coming in. But I do think that there are some table stakes that remain the same. I don't need a large language model to tell me how much money I made yesterday. I don't need it to tell me how many clients I have. So there are a lot of very core important questions that we want to continue answering and improving the infrastructure to answer with more depth and more clarity that are going to stay the same. And so not only am I excited to see some of the new things that come, but I also want to ensure that I recommend to folks that we take a balanced approach and we not overcorrect. I'll speak for myself and my own human nature in saying that it overcorrects heavily almost all the time. And I think not paying attention to some of the new technologies that are coming out would be extremely detrimental, but overcorrecting and over focusing on them, I think could also be detrimental to organizations.
How did your understanding of your audience evolve over the last year?
Most of our listeners started, obviously you got your kind of friends and family who are like, "You got a podcast?" Right? So it started out with a little bit of that. But then most of the other listeners started out as, clients or professional contacts of mine, having been in the consulting space for a handful of years now. There were quite a few folks that I've gotten to interact with that checked out the podcast. I think the thing that has been very cool to see is all of the people in our space that I don't know that have been checking out the podcast. My understanding of the audience is essentially that there are a lot more people than I thought that are interested in and excited about the possibilities of analytics and learning a little bit more about what some of the best approaches are and what some of the people um, in the space think about trying to use them and trying to balance them. So on the podcast, we've had the opportunity to not just have some of the brightest minds in the analytics space on, but also their experience has come from all over. So we've had data and analytics professionals that focus in marketing, sales, engineering, all sorts of different parts of the organization where they are data professionals, but then they also have this other area of expertise. And what we've seen over time is that it's not just centralized, I'm a BI analyst or I'm a data engineer. We've started to see that there are folks throughout organizations who are really excited about using these technologies to try to make their lives easier, to try to make better decisions, and to try and make them faster.
How will you approach tackling any pain points that persisted this year?
I think that a lot of the pain points that organizations experience with analytics have stayed shockingly fairly stable over time. I think that there are new technologies that have addressed or improved the condition of some of these, but I still think that it comes down to a lot of the same stuff. I think the first is one that I've talked a bit about, which is this idea of getting information from lots of different places to talk to one another in a meaningful way. So, obviously, the first level of reporting and analytics is just being able to answer a particular question about a particular thing. So that tends to be pretty easy, right? Like what's the average deal size of a sales deal? Okay, well I can connect into CRM and I can give you that answer. When I want to start asking more comprehensive questions, like I have X number of leads that came into my CRM based on all of that information, how can I connect those individual leads to my cash conversion cycle? So, how many of those leads turn into deals? How many of those deals close? How long does it take me to service or provision whatever thing or good or service it is that my business provides? How long does it take me to collect that information? Now we start spanning multiple systems. So there are questions that start to come up within organizations that require the data which reside in many different systems. This is something that requires a lot of love and care and effort in order to make all of those things work together. Um, I think that another big thing that exists in the reporting space is spiky demand. So, what I mean by that is within an organization, there are typically two major classes of report. One is this is a recurring report, something like a monthly, quarterly, or annual report. And then we have kind of our ad hoc reporting where whether it's going to live for a long time or it's just to answer one question, it's not something where it's this is the same report, we're generating it on a recurring basis. It is impossible to staff an organization to be able to handle the maximum throughput and also have that organization not have people sitting on the bench for chunks of the year. So, one of the things that a lot of organizations struggle with is figuring out which of these repetitive reports can be partially or totally automated how can they structure their centralized and distributed analytics function to ensure that at the times when they have the most demand and need to do the most work, they have all the help they need. But then in the times when it's not crunch time, how are they not paying for too many people? One of the other big pain points that folks experience is around governance. This is another one of those kind of persistent problems. There's no silver bullet. This is something that is got guiding principles, but is specific to an organization. It depends a lot on the people and finding the right people. When I talk about governance, I think some of the most important aspects of that are around if something gets put out, whether it's some sort of infrastructure or report, that there be somebody who's there that understands it and is capable of explaining it to other people who are hopefully going to use it. I think that it is also important to go through routine maintenance and cleanup. Otherwise, an organization can end up with outdated or duplicative reporting that can be very confusing to an organization and can deteriorate trust in the reporting. Another big pain point that we have talked a lot on the podcast about is around communication. So, communication can handle a large number of topics under its umbrella. So things like adoption, uh, understanding, training, consumption, bias, all of these things. But I think one of the things that I would love to see more traction on in 2025 is organizations, and in particular, data professionals within those organizations understanding some of these communication hurdles and having the support to tackle them head on. So, can we provide better training to the people that are building and consuming reports? Can we have training on outliers and the basics of modern statistical techniques and um, outliers and just try to help everybody that is building and consuming reports get more on the same page and have a higher degree of understanding of what the other folks in that chain are doing. I think beyond those, we start getting into a lot of kind of industry specific questions, right? So, different industries, different types of organizations have different things that are of the highest degree of importance to them. So, I think that the biggest solutions to answer your question that I would want to look for in 2025 are around thinking about the analytics function instead of thinking of it just as a cost center, thinking of the centralized analytics function as being something that produces something of value, which is information and good decisions. And thinking about the economics and the blend of staffing that make the most sense for that organization, looking for areas of optimization and automation, and then thinking about which infrastructural investments are the right ones to be able to drive the organization forward through 25 into 26 while still delivering value in 25.
Are there any tools or technologies that you take with you into this new year?
Sure. I think that there are a handful. Some of these are new to the market. Some of these are new to me, and some of these are not new to me, but they're new to me as a consultant doing work for clients. So I think that, as I mentioned before, there's kind of the unknown and known unknowns. Um, there are cool, incredibly powerful, AI based technologies that are coming out every day. Um, some of them I've heard of, some of them have been out, some of them haven't, or I haven't, and those will undoubtedly impact the coming year. I think this is very much a year to look at what the market makes with AI. I think within my particular tool stack, 2024 was a year where Microsoft put a lot of time, effort, and energy into building Fabric, which is the name of their kind of new unified analytics platform. They took a lot of things from Azure, a lot of things from Power BI, a lot of new things, and have rolled out what is a very cool and comprehensive analytics platform. So looking forward to getting to see that get into more people's hands and that product and its adoption to mature. I think one of the things that I have done in my own background and personal life and all of that stuff, but I haven't gotten to do as much of for consultants is kind of just straight up coding. So obviously, in order to interact with databases, you write a lot of SQL code. In order to build things in Power Query and Power BI, you're using, M and DAX and some of these other languages. But one of the things that we are seeing from a lot of our clients is that there is a real need for straight up writing code, whether that's something that does a better job of handling a particular API, or whether that is to automate particular tasks, or whether it's because people are using a less automated stack for ETL or processing or cleaning. I'm having more and more opportunities to just like write Python packages for clients, or things like that. And I think the last one that I will mention is kind of a tech enablement thing. I've mentioned this once or twice on the podcast before, but I think that it is, appropriate to mention as part of the answer to your question. The reason that my company is specialized in Microsoft technology is because that's what I personally have experience with. And the technological landscape is so large and diverse that no one person can be fantastic at every single thing. And while I don't see that completely changing in 2025, I have definitely noticed how if you have the general fundamental concepts of a particular technology type down, some of the, you know, generative AI tools that are out there, ChatGPT and others, really enable someone to take that knowledge and instead of only being able to apply it to one technology stack, because you kind of have to know the idiosyncrasies of that particular technology and where the commas go in its code and all that kind of stuff. I can now, because I, understand the fundamentals of a particular class of technology, I can now interact with quite a few more incarnations of that. So, taking for example, like one of the things that I personally spend a lot of time doing is ETL and infrastructure and databases and things like that. And I have had the opportunity over this year, largely enabled by generative AI, to start taking the knowledge that I have about data structures and algorithms and, optimize, a bunch of technical stuff that listeners probably don't care about, and use that to start branching outside of what had historically been my box, which was primarily Microsoft technology. So I've gotten the opportunity to use that tech to enable different things, and it handles, like, I can tell it, hey, here's the thing that I'm trying to do, here's what I want to optimize for, here's what's coming in, here's what needs to come out, and it can tell me where the commas go, it can tell me the idiosyncrasies of that particular tool that previously would have been too hard to find in all of the documentation in order to get up to speed quick enough. Now that kind of firm background has allowed me to branch out into a lot more different things, and I'm excited to see um, other people have the capability to do that as well. All right. Anyways, that is it for today. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Making Better Decisions podcast. I am super excited to see what 2025 has in store. 2024 was an awesome year, and I think that 25 has the possibility of seeing a lot of really, really cool transformations in the space. I'm excited to have another year's worth of conversations with folks who are on the front edge of that, and I'm excited to get to continue connecting with you, all the listeners. If you liked what you heard today, if you want to hear a little bit more, please make sure to like and subscribe, tell a friend, leave us a review. It really helps. Thank you all so much for listening. Looking forward to 2025. Happy New Year. That's a wrap for today's episode of Making Better Decisions. For show notes and more, visit makingbetterdecisions.live. A special thank you to our sponsor, Canopy Analytic. Canopy Analytic is a boutique consultancy focused on business intelligence and data engineering. They help companies make better decisions using data. For more information, visit canopyanalytic.com. There's a better way. Let's find it together and make better decisions. Thank you so much for listening. We'll catch you next week. Peace.